Here in Galatians chapter 4, verses 1 through 9, we'll see that God redeems those who are under the law. And, so he removes us as slaves under the law to become sons and daughters of the Most High God. So let's read verses 1 through 3. Now I say, as long as the heir is a child, he does not differ at all from a slave, although he is owner of everything. But he is under guardians and managers until the date set by the father. So also we, while we were children, were held in bondage under the elemental things of this world. So you see, showing him as an heir. He's the one who's going to gain a possession and placed under guardians and managers. A guardian is a person in charge of supervising workers, or like a foreman. A manager's in charge of running the household, or a steward. And shows that we're under a bondage, and that's to cause someone to be a slave. So showing we're a slave. And elemental there is talking to live in conformity with some presumed standard or set of customs. So the law is there to guide us, direct us, but it cannot save us. Verse 4 and 5. When the fullness of time came, God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, so that he might redeem those who were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. And that word there, redeem, is something similar that we can match it to would be a coupon. It costs the manufacturer, costs them something. There's no free lunch. Just because you got a coupon doesn't mean it's necessarily free. It costs something. And so to redeem would be to cause the release or freedom of someone by means which proves costly. With the coupon, it costs that manufacturer money to print it, advertise it, and then whatever percentage off, money's off, or if he's giving away free items or whatever, it costs money. So it's showing here how God set us free in order that we might receive. Or really receive what? To receive is to gain something. So what do we receive here? We receive adoption. That's formally and legally declare that someone who is not your own child is henceforth treated as their own child and cared for as their own child, which includes complete rights of inheritance. So that's what they're saying here. They're only sons and daughters. They're under God. There's not grandsons and granddaughters or grandnieces or grandnephews. There's only sons and daughters. Look at verse 6. Because you are sons, God has sent forth the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, crying, Abba, Father. Therefore you are no longer a slave, but a son. And if a son, then an heir through God. So you see, there, verse 6, you're sent. Because you are sons, God has sent forth his Spirit. And that's sent with a purpose. And, it says crying out, Abba, Father. That's to shout or cry out. And really scream out, Abba. And that's the Aramaic word for, the intimate word for father. It'd be like, a little child here saying daddy. And, he's saying Abba, Father. A father is one's biological or adoptive male parent. So we see, how you're no longer a slave, but you're a son. Verse 8, however, at that time when you did not know God, you were slaves to those which by nature are no gods. But now that you have come to know God, or rather be known by God, how is it that you turn your back to the weak and worthless elemental things to which you desire to be enslaved to all over again. So, there, verse 7, 8, there's a time that everyone, didn't know God. And because of that, you're a slave to sin. But now that you have come to know God, more importantly, you're known by God. It's saying, turn back. Why do you turn back to the place where you've been before? What's that, verse 9? But now that you have come to know God, or rather be known by God, how is it that you turn back again to the weak and worthless elemental things to which you desire to be enslaved all over again? So, here we are turning back to a state of limited capacity, back to the weak things, to the worthless things, things pertaining to being poor and destitute, elemental things repeated. Why do you wish to return to the state of being limited in the ability and really continually be in a state of destitute is what he's saying. Why are you wanting to go back to be a slave to sin? And, showing our desires. Why do you wish or desire or even prefer to become a slave again when you're now a son? You now have an inheritance. You've been set free from your bondage. You've been adopted. You now have an eternal family. And plus, you're an heir to everything that God has. Paul's setting up here, really showing the freedom in Christ that we have. We're not a slave. God redeems those who are under the law. He removes us as slaves under the law, and we become sons and daughters of the Most High God. There are only sons and daughters there with God. A lot of times think, well, my grandma's saved, so I'm good. No, there's no grandsons, no granddaughters, no nieces, no nephews. You're either a son or daughter, or you're an illegitimate child. You're not any part of God's kingdom or inheritance. So, become a son or daughter of God today. Thanks for watching.